Good morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. And today I'd like to go back and discuss something that we talked about previously because it's been in the news recently. And that is the subject of redistricting. And if you go to Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, where it starts representatives and direct taxes, and I am reading from textualism and originalism in our constitutional republic. But you go down probably a third through the paragraph, and it says, and this is discussing the process of redistricting, the actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and with every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct the members or representatives. Number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative until such enumeration shall be made. And then it goes on to list the states. Now, the whole purpose of redistricting and doing a census and then redistricting based off of the census is so that each house seat represents the same basic number of people. Now, of course, this does change when a state doesn't have enough population to have more than one district. So in those states, you have a representative that does represent less, but the whole idea is to make it more equal, so it's not a lopsided representation. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it tells us that it must be done after the beginning of Congress within 3 years, and then every subsequent for 10 years. But now we're in a redistricting process in the mid-decade, which isn't really normal. It does not violate the Constitution, but it certainly violates the spirit of the Constitution. The idea that every time we want to squeeze a little power for one party or the other, or a new group of legislatures takes over a state, that we go through redistricting, really isn't what was meant by our founders. They wanted fair representation and fair government. Now, it is true that there are certain states in the country that have redistricting and gerrymandered, and that's what we're really talking about. Is Mr. Gerry and is up in Massachusetts trying to squeeze voters by drawing lines around voters of his party to squeeze all the representation out of his state for his party that he could do. And this has been taken almost to a science the last few cycles, where they're really squeezing it to the point that some states, maybe they have 25-30% of one party, and that party has zero representation in Congress because they've used the mapping system to dilute the opposition to the point where they have virtual no representation at all. And this has happened in a number of states. And I'm sure if you've been watching the news, they've been talking about these various states that have been just gerrymandered beyond belief. And another state is arguing that they're going to do the same on the other side to try to equalize it. This really isn't what we should be doing. And what we really should be doing is forcing the states that have gerrymandered to the hilt to ungerrymander their maps. and make it as fair as possible. If a state's got 45% of the vote, then they should get roughly that number of House seats representative of their party. Or what really should happen is they should be all equalized to the best of their existence. What we've wound up with is fewer and fewer seats that can be won by one party or the other. So if you have seats that are drawn so heavily for one party, obviously that party is going to win. And we have a very large majority of these congressional seats that are like this. And it doesn't really matter which party we're talking about, because they've both done this to such an extreme that there's fewer and fewer seats up for control. And that's why we wind up with such divided government as we have. But I thought we should discuss this for a couple of minutes. There is nowhere that says it must be done at the turn of the decade like we've been doing. They can constitutionally do this. It's not an unconstitutional act. The question really is, should we be doing this? Is there really justification for doing this? These are all things that we have to ask ourselves through the political process and really decide if this is the kind of government we want. Now, I don't want to come too hard on one side or the other here. This is not a partisan channel. This is a channel about our Constitution. And our Constitution is our main law. And it's important to follow the Constitution, and it's important that we have people that actually serve all the people and not serve a party. And these are the problems that we wind up with when we have individuals that are going to serve their party. And this is not a rebuke of one party or the other, because they both do it to such a heavy extent. It makes it almost impossible, because they're able to choose their own voters. I guess we could uproot people by the millions and move them back and forth across pre-drawn lines in congressional districts to change this formation. But honestly, folks, this isn't the best thing to do, best way to do things. We should have fair districts drawn. The greater number of districts should be such that they can be won by either party or any party. I'm not opposed to third parties either. But we have to have fair representation. Think about that for a few minutes. Don't toss it aside. We got redistricting coming in another 5 years anyway. The war between the parties are never going to end until we end it. And we have to end it by sending different legislatures to the government. That's the only way. But when you look at what's happening today, it is not a violation of constitutional law. And I think that's the important thing here, is to understand that it is not. They can do this. They can redistrict all day long, and every 2 years when there's a new election, you could try to redistrict again and again and again, and it would just never end. Let's work towards fair government. Let's work towards doing what's right. Let's work towards preserving our rights, our judicial rights, our Second Amendment rights, our First Amendment rights. Let's work towards that. Let's work to preserve the rights we have instead of trying to squeeze every ounce of political power away from one party or the other. Think about that for a while, folks. And we'll catch you next time on the next Constitutional Talk. Goodbye for now. And folks, have a good day.